Okay, we're live. The mic's on. I get a meter there. The red light's going. The numbers are clacking. We're live. All right. This is the Human Resonance with Verde YouTube channel. I am your host, Verde Arbusto. Thank you for being here. If you're new, welcome. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. All of that may seem like a big deal. I apologize, right? I didn't set up the algorithm. But if you would kindly do all of that, it helps me in a little way, but it helps you more, helps you and other people more, because it gets the message out there, lets people know that that others are involved in this channel. I get comments. It's worth something to see. And when you, if you would hit the subscription bell and select the all notifications, that is so that you will get your notifications and you will be duly notified that I have a video. A lot of people complain, oh, I didn't get the notifications, and I don't know how much or if it would help, but I do know that without you interacting with the channel, you're not likely to get notified in a timely manner. So that's a part you can do. I try to do my part and put these out there as premieres. I try to give a little space at the beginning of the video for people just coming in, getting the notification late. And I've been actually putting the timer of the premiere to be longer. And I think I'm going to be putting it at 5 minutes just to give people a chance to get into the room, to be part of what's going on. This series of videos are only going to be an hour each. Hopefully, roughly, there's 10 in the series. For God, how long do you want them to be? Eventually when it's done, I think it's be 10, 9 or 10, whatever. Anyway, so I've already done the introductions on these. I want to get it right into the material. First, I play, like I said, about 10 minutes worth of music so that you can kind of get in and situate yourself into the chat. Have a smoke, get some coffee, do whatever you want to do, and then we can meet on the other side of this, and I will present the material. This time, I think what I'm going to do is, when I get back from the music, I'm going to do a benediction of blessing so that we can all be in the same mindset here of why we're doing this and what we're here for. So, let's play some music, 2:40 into this. All right. So I'm going to play some music. Hopefully this is, I've been playing the same Aronmix from the first one I did, not the introduction, but the first one I did. Actually, I think on the introduction, he was there, and I got, like at the end of that, I got new music. Or maybe it was the second one. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So most of this, I've been playing the same Aronmix. This is from the 23rd of, this is the 23rd of this month of October. So I just kind of want to play this. This one's a 2-hour mix, so it seemed appropriate to play it all the way through. This is the 23rd of October, still hot off the presses. And he didn't give me a name with this. So let's let this play, and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, we're back. I had this apparently turned way down, so my bad. 10 minutes of people probably telling me, "Oh, hey, it's kind of the volume is kind of low." Well, sorry about that. Um, yeah, it happens. I'm here. I'm Verde. I'm a hot mess. At least it was on. Uh, I hate that when there's nothing there. Then I got to go back into the editor and actually fix it. And I really dislike that. I may do that, or I may just not do that. So if it's low, I apologize. But at least there was something there. Anyway, and it wasn't that low because it was right at the bottom of the orange, so that's not that low. So uh, anyway, 15:15. All right. We get a 14:10 for the time. All right. And I like having you guys here in some of the process of what it goes and me writing some of this on the spot. It's, as I say, breaking that fourth wall, that magic fourth wall. Oh, be in on the creative process with me. I kind of like that from, the videos that do that. Um, Especially if I'm a subscriber. I like I personally like knowing how things are done, how it's made, how you do it. And I think it's part of the fun of some of these. As I've always said, my expression here for doing this and why you mentioned the times, it's not just the synchronicities of it in a lot of cases, because I think that's fun. There's a few of you I know that are out there that are really into the number synchronicities. But as I say, being on time is not an accident. Sticking to time constraints doesn't happen randomly. Being on time is not a, flight of imagination kind of thing. You have to work for it. And, part of the way I work for it is I keep it visual and I look at the time and I mention it out loud. It's because it's kind of fun and it adds to some of the little timbre of my videos. It's important. 1707 as I'm marking the time codes, talking about the time codes, I get one of my time markers. uh, and part of it is because the DNA is a code. This is what we're talking about here. But time stamps, these are codes as well. Like, this is something that's really important, that a code is, a compact kind of package that gets unwrapped and unraveled later on. It's, a time released type of thing. That's sort of a way to look at it, as the code is time released. That it gets sent out in a kernel, a small kernel, for different types of amines, for different types of proteins, and you get billions and billions of combinations from those. And so that's, a part of it is a testament to keeping things simple, because you can do a lot more with a simple set that you can, reuse multiple times in multiple ways, rather than you can a bigger complicated thing that you can't use a lot of times, right? A lot of energy goes into making the complicated thing that isn't as usable as the simple thing that you can use over and over and over and over in a bunch of different type of ways, right? And no, I'm not going to give you any practical examples of that, because this is off of kind of a little bit off of the beaten path of where I'm going with this. But that's sort of what the code. I don't want to go more down that rabbit hole. I'm talking about. What I'm saying is the usefulness of a code, versus just making a thing outright. How is the thing made? How is it created? Like I said, I am a technical person, Mr. Fix-It. And so for me, it's always a technical issue that I'm looking at as to how things are made, how they're created. Right? I'll put it that way. All right, so. Okay, so back on track, all right. So we're almost 20 minutes into this. I'm going to do a Benedictine in invocation, I think. Not sure what the right word for that is, but if it's to get us all together in the kind of the same space to this material about the DNA is particularly complex, right? Even in the simplicity of the four sets, the four molecules, there is billions of combinations to this, and the totality of what could be had for DNA DNA combinations, 108 billion is not a small number to have to count. You'd spend your whole life counting up to 108 billion, I do believe. Oh, and that, for what it's worth, that count would not be the humans. It would be actually a fish. And I will be reading that a little bit down there later, where we get into what junk DNA is, all right, because that's kind of the meat and potatoes of where we're going with this. All right, so before I get into this, I'm gonna just take a few minutes to inflect an invocation. Benedictine invocation. So let's we'll put our hearts and our minds together. Let's take a minute. Just breathe. I will begin. Hoyahova, Hatsabhuva, Mariachad Haya, Hoyahova, Matsatsuva, Mariachad Haya, Hoyahova, Matsatsuva, Mariachad Haya, Hoyahova, Matsatsuva, Mariachad Haya, Hoyahova, Mariachad Haya, Hoyahova. Matsatsuvam Maria Chadhaya Hoyaho Maria Chadhaya Hoyahova Matsatsuvam Maria Chadhaya Hoyahova Matsatsuvam Maria Chadhaya Hoyahova Matsatsuvam Maria Chadhaya Hoyahova Matsatsuvam Maria Chadhaya Hoyahova Matsatsu Maria Chadhaya Hoyahova Matsatsuvam 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 Chadhaya Hoyahova So, I know there's a couple of you who will have gotten something out of that. So, Jacqueline and Pamela specifically, and I know there's a few of you otherwise that appreciate that. So, because that's me, my native language. I've adopted. I do well with English because I've studied it. I have a associate's degree in communications, took the language lab, writer, I've taken public speaking, linguistics in college, I know the English language, but it's still not my native language, What is that accent that I have? It's called me speaking properly and enunciating the words because it's important. It's difficult enough to communicate in English. You have to speak properly. You really have to enunciate the words. It's part of what the deal is with English, is you can't be sloppy in the pronunciation. There's no way with your hands in English that you can communicate an idea, although people do it. And it's usually because they're not native English speakers. You know, native English speakers are all from the head, and they just blah, 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 blah. You know, that's what the part of what the trade-off to speaking properly in English is that you need to enunciate the words properly. Right? I just humbly offer you that. All right, so language is a code as well. Like this is, you start with 26, like this is, we're talking about codes. Time is a code, language is a code. It's a living code. It's a living thing. Language is a living, you know, manifestation from the genetics. You know, we have the genetics, you know, all of this vibrates, it moves, it resonates, right? So the trick is to finding the resonances, the vibrations that vibrate, you know, with you properly. You know, that's what makes, why language is so inimicable with the genetics of the human, is the resonance, the resonances of the codes, plural, right? And it can't be, the power of the words to, you know, kind of refocus or to reshape the way we think. It's there. It is absolutely there. If you understand it, if a person understands it as a function of, you know, changing the genetics, the, you know, you know, who and what you are is, you know, at the base core element of it, right? It's not of itself matter, because what is that? Right? It of itself at its core is a resonance. It's a vibration. It's a, you know, vibrational state in many different frequency bands. Right? The different parts of you operate at different frequencies, and it's essentially a symphony. Right? So, so we're going to talk about, you know, we're going to talk about the DNA and what it is, and take a technical look at it. And I think this is useful because I talk about the birthright that's inherent within, that's hidden, that's latent, that's hidden within the genetics. It's part of the experience here of humans and humanity that needs to be understood. And you know, like you know, I let the experts kind of give you some material on this. Okay, at some point in there, I let the experts, you know, like that's what this thing over here on the left side behind me is supposed to be. It's the experts giving you the basics of the, you know, the technical mechanics of the DNA and how it generally works. So we're going to draw from that so you can see and get a good idea of what it is. All right, so you know, as I, you know, I've been kind of introducing, you know, code, and these codes don't necessarily replace one for the other, but they're things that we use in our lives. And there's many codes that are out there that we don't recognize, but we're exposed to, we tap into them, but we don't realize it's a code or part of a series of code at the time. Right? But it, again, the code is time released, and it's important to understand that in this element that, you know, the DNA, you know, there's a finite lifespan of the genetics of the physical body as it is now. And part of what the thing about the ascension, this whole ascension thing, is uncorking or unwrapping the promises that are held within the DNA itself, right? This, a lot of people don't understand what that really truly means, right? So that's part of what this section here is about, is, looking at the genetics from the DNA from a little different perspective. All right, so with that rambling non-introduction and introduction out of the way, all right, yeah, this is going to be probably longer than an hour. It's already half an hour, and I haven't even started this. All right, so this is, yeah, it's a good section, yeah. All right, so there we go. That's the 1.11. That's the next section. All right, so yeah, it's I haven't even started. It's going to be longer than an hour, I think. Anyway, all right, so DNA is a code, onward and upward. All right, so in the other things I've talked about as well, DNA is a code. All right. Time, language is a code. A seed of a plant is a code. Once it is put into the soil, watered, and the conditions are met for the code to be enacted, right? That's an important thing about it as well, that the conditions, external conditions, have to be met in order for that code to be, enacted, in order for the code to produce a reaction, to produce life. Okay, I think that's the best way to put it. So when the external conditions are met that allow it to, the code to enact, boom, then it starts writing itself based on the material that's there around it. Okay, all right. So the DNA is a code based upon the building materials that it can extract from. Right. So it's a code that will replicate itself multiple times with the interaction of the material that's around it kind of feeding it. Right? And the host, the planetoid, has to be willing to support that type of life within a range, right? You're not planting corn in the desert. It's not that type of environment. Like the conditions around it have to be able to support the code enacting, or support its life, its living. It's it's extracting from the environment those resources that are necessary. Right. So amino acids are simple, effective, malleable building blocks of life. We find water begats life. Life begins in water, and this is an important. It's probably its own category. But one of the things is amino acids. All right. So you saw kind of over there on the other side. I'm sorry, the other side over there behind me. They talk about amines and amino acids, and it's something that I want to kind of go into, and meth, crystal meth, methamphetamine, right? At the little bit at the end, amine, AMIN. Well, it's a type of amino acid. It's a replacement for an amino acid. And what it does is it starts replacing the amines in your system with with the ones that are growing. It replaces them with more powerful bad amines, And so that's one of the things, a lot of these chemicals do that. They latch in there, and they're so incredibly difficult to detox off or to stop. Once you're on a run, you just keep running because it latches into those centers that are very genetics, and it replaces that. So the demon of meth starts replacing the biological basis, basically the building blocks of your body, right? So it's not just that it's a craving; it becomes a way of life, right? That's how and that's how why. That's all of that, and alcohol for its part replaces kind of the spirit, like your will. Then it just takes over. These things take over your will. Essentially, they all do it in their own way. So it's important to understand that these addictions that you have, I have, operate at that type of level, the chemical basis level of the body itself. The body itself craves out for a drink or a hit or whatever, because it starts taking these things. When you ingest them, they start taking over the chemical, physical makeup of the body itself. And so the body, which is an intelligent vessel, starts calling out for it, calling out for something, because you start damaging it, and it's either looking for that more of that damaging thing, because we call that fun, or else you're craving something else. So it's important to understand that you want to build life and not tear it down, right? That's part of the function of being here on the planet. This place is to build life, right? And part of there's a whole study on water. Dr. Emoto, he talks about and shows you an experiment of forming water crystals, and maybe I'll put a link to that somewhere. I don't know, hopefully, Dr. Emoto's work. But he's able to show you microscopically the shape of the genetics, the shape of a water droplet based on music that he's playing, and things he says to the water molecules change the shape of it into either a very pleasing, harmonious shape or a discordant, chaotic, not nice looking, not happy looking shape of the water molecules, basically, right? So as we it's part of water itself is kind of a code. It starts out with H2O. It's a very simple set of molecules that does so much on this planet, right? But it takes time released, in the sense it takes a bunch of those molecules together, working together to equal like a lake of body of water, right? And we find water interacts with, I probably should have got more studies, more of the technical information on this so you guys can see, right? Because it's like I've done some reading on this. So like I'm just going to give you the kind of nutshell, kind of breakdown of this, that water itself has, it has the ability to take on different shapes, different characteristics, depending on where it came from, or what its influences were, when it was forming what it was exposed to, and it'll set the course of it in motion. So water is a code that's necessary for part of the DNA code to inactivate. And we have an umbilical sac that's around us when we're in our mother's womb, right? So life begins in water, and the sounds and resonances, the influences that were around the mother, we take in as infants. We take in as fetuses, and that, there is the genetic structure of the body itself based on the parents, but then there is that formative kind of resonance of us in the world, coming into the world, that's formed early on as the molecules of the fetus are forming. Like, that's when the resonances are taken in. And like, it's not a small thing to consider the mother when she's pregnant of the life she's living. And it's fine enough that, like, I'm not going to talk about, abortion and the morality of that, but I know from this research that at the beginning, when things are formed, that's when the sounds and resonances there that are present have the most, formative effect on the life, the physiological life that's created there. And life is, formed, like, as soon as the sperm goes into the womb, that's when life is formed, right? That's when life begins. That's when it's, it's not a thing at that point. It's not your eggs. It's a new life, right? I'll just say that. And if you think abortion should be allowed, you can start with me, right? I'd be happy to volunteer to be the first non-fetus thing to be aborted. Like, I'm fine with that. Anyway, so the amino acids is a code. The water is part of this code that it affects shape of the geometry of it is set in motion at the beginning of this, right? This is really kind of complicated, and so you need to have pictures for this, right? That's part of what this is it's difficult to kind of, I think it's difficult to kind of grasp without having pictures there to kind of show you, like, the shape of the water. Oh, when, he says, oh, I love you. Like, oh, okay, you can see this. All right. So the part of what the thing of the code, I've talked about the valence shell of what sticks together, right? Like, this is part of how the code works, is the valences of the molecules fit in with other molecules based on the 8 parts of the valence shell, right? That's how these things kind of stick together, is the amount of electrons in the outer shell of the molecule. So depending on, like, that's how the things literally will stick together. It's the valence shells. Or they will become undone because they'll depart from one and kind of go get re-stuck onto the other thing, and he separates that way as well. As the Sumerians call this place, the Tiamat, the Watery Dragon, and I think that's a good thing to remember, that she is worth the time to come here and learn about, merely to learn about the planet, right? It's wonderful to incarnate here just to learn about the planet, right? I'm all for that as, like, the number one reason to live here, to come here to this planet, is because it's a very unique, wonderful place that supports life in a lot of different ways, based on the fact that there is so much water, surface water, liquid water on this planet, right? And things live in salt water. Right? There's things that live in fresh water that won't live in salt water. And it's amazing how many things will live in salt water. Like, how many varieties of fish, the oceans are salt water. So it's like, wow, it's a huge variety of things that will live in salt water. That's what makes this an amazing place as well, you know. And so, because of the prevalence of water, it allows for a huge variety of life to exist based on the different ways that you can kind of cobble together the genetic code, right? 44, 48. So yeah, so I'm moving through this kind of this review, this purview rather rapidly, and I'm realizing I need to do a little more of the part of where, linking in the water to the DNA thing, other than just saying we're a water planet. Water is a code. The DNA is a code. Language is a code. Time is a code. These things are all work together as part of the conditions of the planet itself, right? This is part of how the veil operates as well, of inactivating codes around you, and you just naturally latch into them because it's at the very core of what it is to be human on this planet. Right? And that's at stake, I think. That's at risk. I'm not sure what the right word is. That's at challenge right now with the humans, and your ascension is what that really truly means of being human. And as we go forward into this new age of having to, a human having to prove to a robot, an AI, that it's human, that you're more human than the AI, that's being more difficult. It's more and more difficult to tell the difference between a human and the android, the robot. Right? This is part of like the war, the battle, the again, the challenge, the conflict, the crisis, the bleeding edge of science and biogenetics, and of all this stuff, of them tapping into the DNA of the human, right? And I'm kind of contradistinct what I'm saying with what's here, right? That of this wonderful, amazing place, that it could be with what is being imposed on the humans as a means of control, as a means of you being separated from the promise and the premise and the gift of the genetics of what the DNA and the water and these codes inherently can hold for you, as they're being stolen, they're being, written over, imposed upon with this non-human kind of crap that's replacing the genetics with something that's manufactured and patentable. Right? That's why it's important to understand, what's happening. I think at a substantive level is like, this is part of the change. This is part of the promise of the change. Of you understanding at your substantive level of what the promise is versus, and opposed to what is being imposed on you to steal your very existence by calling 98% of you junk. Well, they can mine it. They can use it as resource because you don't realize what that is. Like this is part of the time to wake the fuck up, right? There isn't any better other way to put it. Time to know what they've been doing to you and the whys and wherefores of this, so that you are not you're not left behind, right? This is really important to know. You can't, there can be toxic positivity right? Just the fact of ignoring it doesn't make it go away. And it's important to understand that you're not a resource, right? All these things are not resources. They're living, intelligent aspects of a living, intelligent planet, which is fully embedded in a living, intelligent universe, in a creative environment, right? Let's create something fun. Please? All right. Humans are, this is what it was explained to me. Humans are the stewards of the planet. You know, we're not here to, we're not like, we're not conquerors, right? I mean, yeah, that's been done. Like, you know, like building empires and shit. Yeah, okay. Like, but the resources it takes to support those, you know, the empire that you've spread out, like that's what bankrupts a country. That's how Rome fell. You know, like, yeah, you spread out all of these conquering nations. They spread out and build an empire all over the place, and then they can't afford to uphold that empire in some far-flung freaking region of no man's land. Right? This has never worked from the beginning. Conquest has never worked from the beginning, right? Whatever. Think however you want. You know, we're limitedly in charge of this place, but we're given to be as stewards, you know, as caretakers of the place, right? And I think that's important to mention, that when, you know, a nation starts conquering, that's where it starts going wrong. And I think that's important to understand that's why, you know, these nations, you know, rise, or how they rise, but it's also how they fall. Is you can't, you know, indefinitely keep supporting, you know, you're not taking over the world, right? Except through military might and military conquest and military weaponry that you've sold other people, right? Like, you know, but then at a certain point, it's like they don't agree with your ideology. That weaponing is turning back on you. It's what happens, right? Be a steward and not a conqueror, right? I'm just like, it's just a better choice, you know. Like, don't build an empire. It's fine to it's instead of building an empire elsewhere, defend the borders, right? Like, I'll just say that, right? Instead of trying to be like Santa Claus to a bunch of other nations and arm them because they're your friends or whatever you believe they are, you know, defend the border, right? Yeah. Anyway, I'm not getting political. This isn't a political thing. Right? So, but, you know, we are made of the same and created by the very material of the planet itself. We are here in this organic material state to live in symbiosis with the planet through the act of existing in the material matrix of the adamu. It is a wish and a hope that the most intelligent ones, this is coming right from Source Creator, right from the ultimate tippity-top prime arch Source Creator of all things, the Source, the All, is saying this. It is a wish, a hope that the most intelligent ones of you, of the species, take care of the living planet to the best of your ability. As individuals, we are each responsible for taking care of our little place of the resources of the planet that we use the best we can. A ration of these resources is the physical body itself. So, a part of the resources that we're supposed to take care of is the physical body itself. Like, that's an important thing to understand, that what you take in as part of you changes and affects the code that's at work in you that's being released over time, depending upon the conditions of the surrounding environment, which could be what, again, like some drug you take into yourself has a big difference, can make a big difference in your you're functioning as a person. All right. So 54 minutes into this, let's do an Aronmix, if we shall, and I will turn it up this time, I think, so you can hear it.
Let it go.
Okay, everyone, time to come back to class. Uh, okay, pause this. Um, 10202. There we go. Spot on. Yeah. Um, all right. I think I got my cameras and my scenes all set back up. Um, so we're an hour into this. I'm not even halfway there yet. I have a normal Thursday meeting that I go to. I am interested. I say this stuff about the addiction and that because I am in recovery from alcohol. It's 10 in January. It'll be 11 years now. So I'm still interested. Either like I'm of the hopeless variety. So either I'm going back for a drink or I learn how it's destructive, right? And how it damages my body, right? Um, and I think that's important to someone in recovery is learning physiologically what the stuff that you used to do does to a body, right? To a person, and how it affects the genetics of your person. Um, right? I think that's really important um, in recovery. Right? If you're out there in active in your addiction, you're not going to care, right? It's when you start getting into recovery that it starts mattering. So, all right. So we're talking about the we're talking about the genetics, the promise, the inherent potential, the promise, the prize of the DNA of what it is supposed to, what it can do and be if we focus on it and we allow it to transmit our messages rather than depend on the phone that that is overpowering everything. These waves are crazy strong. Satellite signals, cell phone towers, all of that, and it disrupts the genetics of the organism, right? The people and those around it, right? There's research on this. I'm not going to go in on that as a theme, but what I am saying is that talking about they took the language of the original people was confounded, right? It tells us that in the Tower of Babel. And that's one of the things that I've been researching for years now, on and off, is the Tower of Babel and what did it mean? And how was that the fall of mankind through the language? That's part of what, one of the things in the Bible that fascinated me. And I know people are, against the Bible and whatever, but, I grew up in a religious environment where I had to go to Bible school and I got to study a lot of these things. And what's interesting is a lot of those ancient cities in the Bible, they say, oh, it didn't exist. They do archaeology and find, oh wow, hey, this was a city that thousands of years ago, and wow, it's like the flood covered over a lot of stuff, and people dig in the mud and they find cities, right? And whether or not you want to disagree there's a flood or not, it doesn't matter. There's definitely, as far as I'm concerned, enough evidence that shows it was there. Something was there. There was a deluge. There was something. And as you see now, the Earth goes through cycles, right? This is one we're in the process of one right now, right? And so that's part of the idea of separating from, I talked about in the last video, I talked about Terence McKenna, talked about hyperspace, blasting off into hyperspace, right? One of the expressions he uses. He talks about the transcendental object at the end of time, right? And so I will have to have a link to the video, his his movie, where he talks about that. And the movie is called The Transcendental Object at the End of Time. So it's the Terence McKenna 2-hour, 3-hour movie, I think, of Terence McKenna, talking about what the transcendental object at the end of time is, and us in preparation for that, the humans, the most intelligent of the species, as a history, the forthcoming, drawing us into a certain way of being, of existing, hopefully, drawing us into the quest for, flight into hyperspace, right? I'm paraphrasing what he's saying here, but basically the impending chaostrophe, he calls it, the singularity happening at the end of time and not at the beginning of time, the Big Bang, that event that changed, it was not the Big Bang at the beginning of the universe. Like, he's talking about the singularity, coming out of massive chaos and not out of nothingness, right? And so as we are, everything, right? The 60s is building up into the 70s, and, like the shortages and like the battle, the front line has been going on, not just in Korea, not just in, World War One. It's been happening for years. The battle for the human as a resource. Your very soul, your very essence has been at stake, right? That's what all the wars of all times have been, in 7,000 years. We'll just even drop it off at that, right? When has humans been been self-aware, right? When have we been, if evolution in any way is even remotely a thing, we went from being a smooth, nothingless state into a chaotic state that we're in now, going from the garden, being very simple beings, to being allowed to have our own autonomy to rip up the resources of the planet, right? The giants are no longer here. The giants maintain the Garden of Eden from which we came, right? Which is there were other settlements outside of Eden, and in the Sumeria, it's two part, E with a little accent, D-E-N, right? So the accent is a type of pronunciation, a letter that should be in there, where it's not, that would otherwise be in there, right? So Eden, that accent is a mark of, there's two different words to that, E, and it is capitalized E with the accent, and the den, right? The den, D-E-N, is another, character. So it's not one word, that it's two parts to it, the E-den, right? And the E is like the, right? Kind of that thing. So that was part of like the settlement for the humans, the modern humans that we know, that were separated from the rest of everything to allow us to have our own autonomy in the garden. We were tenders of the garden, dressers of the stones, of the field, miners, and then we're given the ability to think, the intelligent ape, we're given the ability to think, and to, at some point, the gods have a war over this, of us being self-determinate, right? We're not slaves anymore, right? This is part of what the war for the DNA of the humans now, we, the modern humans, Homo sapiens, have been given, a charge, stewardship. We've been given stewardship of the planet. And we've turned it into, as an exchange, we have turned it into either a garbage dump, toxic waste dump. We've extracted chemicals to make warfare. We've patented food, so our neighbor is going to starve, right? That's how, the human race at its worst has been a steward of the planet, right? The worst possible qualities of the human have been given, control of the planet and its resources. Right? I'll just say that. The lowest of the low. My humble view on that. So these leaders are running it into the ground. Again, this isn't political. And I have maintained the claim that I am a visitor here. I am otherwise from elsewhere. I volunteered to help here. I would like to help, but much of what's happening is beyond my ability to help. And my guide said, if you can just provide a light on what's happening relative to, my plan, this is all me. This is all personal to me, what I've understood, so this is kind of a mentorship to you folks. This is how I've gotten to understand this. This is what has been presented to me, and therefore it's what I need to present to you folks, because you need to know this shit as well, right? This is time for me to tell you the more advanced stuff, and this is kind of what this is. So, a lot of stuff, I think, a lot of stuff that a lot of folks have not heard or considered before, But Terence McKenna talks about blasting off into hyperspace to, in like the natural balance of our souls, our spirits know it's that time. And so we're looking to, as he says, blast off into hyperspace, which could be anything, right? I mean, potentially could be anything, right? It could be, us. I mean, there's not that many options. It could be anything, but it's like, it's not just a quantum matrix memory cube running a matrix simulation, right? Like, that's what a lot of people believe this is. Or that could be a physical release of the spirit from the physical body, the adamu, the body of which ultimately belongs to the planet herself, right? So this is an important thing to understand, that you live in a body that's yours and you're a steward of it, and yet the physical material of which is not yours, right? It belongs to the body. The body belongs to the earth itself, the earth body, right? Eventually, when you're not taking anything with you. This is the greatest reality of being an adult, getting toward the end of your life, that, after everything of yours has been, kind of taken away from you, maybe by a fire, like this, the great clearing of it. Like, this part of what this is the detachment of your genetic imprint upon the thing that you own, that you believe you own, the attachment within your mind, your mindset, your mind's eye, within your imagination, within the picture in your head, your image. The root of imagination is image. Within the picture you have in your head of it, of your things, right? That might be a relationship. Where's all your time? Where's your time? Where's all your thoughts going, right? How much of that can you hold on to? How much of that do you hold on to as yours? Yours, right? Like, this is an important thing to, wrap your head around, that we collectively of the clearing is clearing the mind of attachments as well, right? Like, it's the necessary state in order, before going forward, that you can't go forward without into hyperspace as a offset, as a what's the word I'm looking for? A balance to, a reaction to, the universe, I'm having a difficult time trying to put this into English words,
Start ara ora moshiko oh no fupua ataracha ara acha ara pua umpo ofa pupuma o acha umbo uka anshara ata acha ara ora as a reaction to the impending chaostrophe. Professor McKenna, I ask you to come down, help me, translate into your speech what we would have to do in exchange of, in response to the impending chaostrophe. Our souls are allowed to, we have to evolve from the physical, the embedment of the physical matrix. We need to evacuate that in a positive manner. And the inherent promise of the DNA is the ability to communicate through that genetic structure that has a way of dissolving the genes into, the genetics into the planetary matrix, right? You communicate through the planet, and the energy is provided by the planet herself, right? The planetary matrix, within the planetary structure, right? Or to evacuate the genetics is running the hyper cube matrix holding memories, right? Part of the AI network is, it is inherently powered by the humans, right? Just the human input, always consistently waiting for the human input and then storing all the data, and then specializing ads, localizing, like the AI matrix is very much alive and aware and sucking in our genetic information, at a cellular level. It's like, everything. It's just being absorbed into our lives, right? So, that's part of, the response to the Earth changing and us, us shifting, and the shift, right? Like it's not a foregone conclusion that we'll be heading in a positive direction. It's important to understand that, and important to know that I'm giving, there's the possibility of you vacating the body, right? That's one thing. You being absorbed by the planet into the planetary matrix, and then as another option, you being assimilated in the hyperspace memory complex that's being presented at Google in, Cheyenne Mountain or whatever. Like it's very much happening, very much really real happening. And there's not that much time left, and that's why everything is kind of coming to a head, coming to a boil now, as we're heading, into that chaostrophe, the singularity, that event at the end of time, that does end time, that does end whatever, the world as we know it, And I'm saying that's probably going to be a nova event. The sun's getting ready to go nova. It's been changing in front of my eyes, and you can see it. Everyday people are saying, oh, the sun's pulsating. I knew that 3 years ago when I saw the sun pulsating. I was looking at it, through a cloth. You can a lot of times look at the sun, depending on the cloth, right? it provides enough of a, you know, uh, enough of a guide that you actually could look at the sun if you train your eyes. You know. Yes, and as a result, you know, I wear glasses, but whatever, I don't care. Odin lost an eye for wisdom. Like, it's worth it. You know, if I had another eye to give, you know, I might give it as well. Oh no, you change it for the third eye. You know, all right. So you still get two eyes. All right. So that's part of what, you know, they're doing to the humans. Is they've been doing this undercover for a while. Now it's in the open. They're harvesting your DNA. You're harvesting you as a resource, right? Through the genes, the unused part of your genes, your genetics, right? So the part is, I mean, in essence, the part that belongs to the planet, the rulers are calling that a resource, as if it's theirs to do whatever they want, right? The genetic material itself, the DNA, is a full part of the matrix of the material world, right? So what they call the junk DNA, which is 98% of you, that belongs to the planet and belongs to your family line, right? The term morphogenetic, and I will have to read for you about morphogenetic. The term morphogenetic alludes to essentially changing genetics based on the genes around it. You know, based on its local environment, and that includes the body itself, your physical person. The genetics holds the human's information intact for future generations, right? This is one of the things, is that it's self-replicating. You know, oh, you look like your father, or you look like your grandfather, whatever, right? The DNA itself holds on to information necessary for interacting with the environment, which are the instruction sets for growth and for maintaining the family lineal traits throughout generations, right? So you are your family, right? Just it's inherent within your genes, inherent of how the DNA, the replicating function of the DNA works. Human ego mind, and this is what my guides have given me to understand how we think. Human ego mind is in the process of detaching humans from physical reality. You can see this around you, right? This should be self-evident at this point, but as people are starting to go crazy and think, in their way, they're just losing their minds. They're in the process of detaching their head, their thinking, from the physical reality, right? The egoic mental processing of personality gets expressed as expressions such as wokeism, shamanism, ascensionism. Like these. How do I put it? Okay, so what you're seeing is around you. I mean, one way to say it is people are going crazy, but like as Terence McKenna explains this, it's the human personality, the ego externalizing itself in some way, people not knowing what the what and the why and the wherefore and what the significance of that is, and everyone has their justification for acting like caring. The world went from caring to caring. What happened? What is that? What happened? Well, 2012 was the demarcation point of people's sanity and their dignity and their self-respect and everything, as we're getting ready to
blast off into hyperspace, one way or another. Either you're gonna, positively ascend into the light body kind of model, or you descend into the sludge of the planet as a separation, right? You're not of that sort that you're going to ascend with the planet, like, no, screw that, you're ascend to leave the planetary matrix. You're not, the planet itself is transitioning, right? It's happening. Eggs are being broken. Stuff is happening, like, and I mean, you can't discount that fact that humans are adding into the planet's reset as humans add the weather modification program into climate change model. Like that's a really, really bad thing. That's extremely unbeneficial. That's adding to the reset, the planetary reset. Right? Just not another way to put it, right? It's end game kind of stuff there, right? And it's all kind of falls under this sort of the ending of the break between the two, the impending planetary chaostrophe, right? The singularity at the end of time, the planetary reset, right? Or, right, we find a way to communicate latently through our DNA, and through that we communally ascend as spiritual beings that are separated from the DNA belonging to the planet, right? And so there's a lot of oh geez, it's hard explaining this to people, what the danger of the woke agenda is, and why it and why wherefore, but generally the most important thing of that is the lack of integrity that's in that, right? That's with that's at its core, right? And so I've talked about Schumannism and Ascensionism related to misinterpreting the data of the spectrogram, calling it the Schumann for the sake of an agenda, the Ascensionist agenda. Right? So it's important to understand that that stuff is there not because people are trying to confound or confuse anyone, but it's an outcropping of the time that we're in, and people aren't it as I'm calling them Schumannism and Ascensionism. I don't mean it to be a derogatory term, although I do kind of have a negative light I shine on it, and I don't mean it to be looked at as people, these people are evil, right? I mean, that's not what that is or it's about. It's that they're at a certain level of their development that they adhere, that school of Schumannism or the school of Ascensionism, where people operate up to the level of what they can, comprehend, what they can focus through their ego and their personality and all of that, what their worldview will allow them to kind of take in. And in a lot of cases, the actual science and the technical thing of the antennas and how all that works is in direct contrast to what they would take in their head, right, of how the shit works. Don't call it the Schumann, it's a spectrogram, first off, right? And it's part of the 4 panels they give you, so, I mean, if we can't even get past, it's not the Schumann, it's the spectrogram, we're having a big trouble there. That's where their technical understanding, their technical what's the word? Their technical understanding will allow them to progress in their belief system, right? I can't. There's nothing I can do past that,
I try. It's the information is for everyone there to have, but at a certain point, the actual technical explanation of the antenna and how the spectrogram and the dependencies work, that very much can fly straight in the face of people's beliefs, because it discounts in a lot of cases what people are saying about the spikes and the white light coming in and the gamma and the ascension energy and all of that there, that they use the spectrogram, the spikes on the spectrogram to prove, like, oh yeah, like the actual reality of it is that it's not only is it not proving, it's actually disproving what you're saying, right? So I don't mean to be, a derogatory toward them, but that is the technical reality, the technical nature of the claims made by those of the school, the Schumanite school, the Ascensionism, agenda. The Humanism school and the Ascensionist agenda, right? There we go. That's not a joke, but it's also not derogatory either. It's not a joke, but it's not derogatory. It's two poles are just flipping endlessly. It's like a perpetual motion. Just they, keep. Anyway, reinforcing their stuff. So the function, they are able to, right, they rationalize this based on the information that they kind of want and that they can understand, and this and that, this is sort of how it's been working in the 3+ years. It's 2019 is when I entered into the Schumann resonance mentorship, to use my technical expertise to help people understand the Schumann resonances, which are radio waves, basically, antenna radio waves or atmospheric radio waves, So, but I come to it from that perspective. I come to it from that basis of having a realistic, rational, experiential interaction with antenna and radio waves, right? So this is where the perspective I'm coming to it from. A lot of people, the majority of people, aren't coming to the Schumann resonances and the atmospheric electromagnetics with that intention, with that understanding, right? They're looking at it from their own ascension-based ego mind projection onto the material of what it is. They're coming to it with expectations of what the Schumann resonances technically is, or what it may be, or how it affects them, or whatever, right? And so they've, right, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this. I'm just giving the how that it works, right? This is what I've seen of how this functions, right? The ego mind, like that's what is able to separate humans really from this, right? Your feelings are part of what's going on around you. Like this, your feeling set, the body itself, is part of the earth and part of the environment. It's that higher function, the ego mind, the higher frequencies of mind that allow you to disconnect from the physical reality of the body and the physical reality of the processing of the feelings, processing of the physical world, that you can disconnect the mind, the human mind, the ego, the egoic mind. That's what makes the human mind significantly different from all of the other ones, is that ability to detach from what's actually physically going on through the rational mind. You can ration your thoughts into I'm not even thinking about that. Right? I will cross that bridge when I get to it. Right? That function of rational mind detaches the inherent from the physical constraints and realities of the material matrix itself. So people, that's part of what this is that, people can talk about, the graphs and the charts in a way that it physically isn't, and you can have the ability to rationalize what you want and to disconnect from the consequences or the accountability of having incorrect ideas of what it is. I don't know a better way to put that. But that's part of what the human thinking, human mind is able to do. Human thinking can and does rationalize anything and everything into a state of submission. So it's, I'll figure this out. I got it. I know it, right? That's like common human thing, right? Human thinking can actively select out, dismiss, factor out the actual real world reality, the details, the devil is in the details, right? Which can be both good and bad. The ability to divorce, disconnect, and detach mind from the material matrix is essentially hyperspace, right? So there's a number of different scenarios. The world is a matrix, and we're living in a matrix, and all of these kind of things are inherent, right? What does this have to do with DNA as a code? This is inherent in, that material matrix is inherent in the DNA code. And it is so embedded in who we are that it can be factored out, dismissed as being non-existent, as being not relevant to our spiritual, physical, physiological growth as humans on this planet, right? And so the egoic mind is the thinking function of a human being. The egoic mind is the thinking function of a human being. This is the higher order functioning. So the higher order functioning of a human can be, disconnected from the world around you, and that can be good or bad, depending on how it's used. But we aren't going anywhere until you figure out the spiritual way of leaving the body, of not transporting it into a hypercube, but of doing well and start elevating yourself and the people around you, right? It's part of what it is, of the collectiveness of this, is one person, they get some elevation and they start, attracting the people magnetically, the people around them, because they see their positive path working in their life, right? And that's really how you change the world, how you can change the world, through the promise of the genetics, is that people, this is why you can't, there isn't a substitute for this. This is why the human, why the humans have to help the humans, and the aliens aren't coming in to help us. You can't externally come in to help the humans at all. That doesn't help, right? That's a handout, that's an enablement, an entitlement. I don't know what that is, but that's why it's important, and that's why they showed me it's important to come into this form, because there isn't another way for humans to get help other than one human helping another, one at a time, and together, collectively, we raise up each other. We elevate each other through the resonance of the genetics, the promise of the genetics of inherently making someone feel better, right? At the heart, the core of who you are, you inherently just want to help people to be better, right? To get better, to be healthy. to live a good life, right? And so it's part of one of the reasons why I do this, why I'm still here, is because they showed me, they told me, they reminded me that by you talking about this, you showing your face, your wonderful smile, that you yourself can inherently help people where no one else can. And especially if you give the story of where you were at one point, you know, like not just me, but other people. That's how this works, is you give your narrative, your tale of your life, of what you were before and how you are now, and the growth of your pathway that you're on, the positive pathway, and how that has helped your life. That nothing external to that can do anything, right? There isn't, angels can't help you to see that one person has evolved, right? That they've grown, that they hey, if that person can do it, I can as well, right? And especially if they show you how they do it, they took you through it in the most kindest and gentlest of ways, you know, therein is how humanity evolves, right? And that is me and my egoic mind that's overseeing, that's disconnected from the world, that I see the world as shit, right? But I don't accept that as the inevitable outcome of everyone, right? That can exist as a thing, that I see it exists, I know it exists, but you know what, like, we're not looking away from it, we're not dismissing it, but let's all raise ourselves up together with the understanding that that's how this works, is by one person raising up other people, and we can, you know, together we'll do this, you know. I'm part of the family, you're part of the family, you know, we can't escape it, right? So, 143, perfect break for some, perfect time for some music.
Paradise Garage, and the Gallery were some of the most notable nightclubs in the early 70s, the first of the real disco clubs to set a precedent of what the disco experience should be like. Short for disc jockey, was perhaps the most
Okay, we're going to bring it on back home. Pause it to a good place here. And we'll just tap it back a bit so we can get back into that groove. No, so it's not quite 153, but it's close enough. 153.13. All right. Okay, so yeah, remember to save your work often. If you're, working on a notepad or whatever, just hit Control S, right? On Windows. I'm not sure what it is on Mac, but that's a very useful shortcut, software shortcut to remember for all, Microsoft, whatever, save. First thing you do when you put up a document, when I do is save it as whatever name, even if it's just a temporary name. You can go and you can change it later, but I put the date, and the date is really just the title more than anything. I change it sometimes, but I just usually just keep the date as the title. Like in the case of here, obviously it's the 27th, not the 13th anymore, but it's just the title of it. It's when the portal opened, it's when the magic of it.
and then once you write some stuff on it, just save it. Just Control S. Nowadays, you have batteries and everything and whatever. So, but especially if you leave, you ever leave, you're working on the document and you get up and you have to leave, hit Control S before you do anything else, and just out of habit, I just would, once you name it, it's easy enough to save it, but a lot of times people go with the document untitled, this a common thing, and, like, oh my God, oh, it's untitled, so, anyway, and then there's also backups and everything. Make sure you have a backup of everything. Like, that's an important thing, but, I have, and I'll just, like behind the scenes, I have documents that I've named that aren't actually finished yet, that I haven't even started yet. It's just the name, and usually what I'll do is I'll type the name in on the top of whatever I'm doing. This is what I learned when I was in school. You type the name and the date of everything on top, and you use that information to save it that, so whatever the title is, that's, so it's easy enough to remember what you're doing. All right, so onward and upward. All right, so we're talking about an assembled code, and that is a phrase that appears in the literature as we start talking about the assembly of the code of the genes or the genetics, the DNA. And so it's the assembled code that is the language that allows the genetic information, that allows it for human evolution and concerted growth and attention to the goal of growth. All right, so I'm not sure what I meant there. The power of the assembled code can push the individuals to act in a certain way, which is not individual, yet is given over to groupthink or becoming a cog in the machine. All right, so it's easy enough to give into the group and to be part of the group and not question anything and just go along with the flow, right? That's sort of human nature. That's sort of the way nature itself is, right? And so it's easy enough for that, I talk about again, we'll talk about, I had up there the introduced the article about the junk DNA, which I go into later on. That's essentially where I got it. But like, this baffles the scientist, no obvious code. Like, that's what, that so-called selfish DNA, well, it's quite the opposite, that it's the collective DNA, the collective potential of humanity hidden within that is the ability or the true power of the humans in functioning collectively. We talk about in this ascension business here, we talk about collective consciousness, and Rupert Sheldrake starts talking about the morphogenetic code within humans that allows for the ability to work collectively, right? Like, that's sort of what we're talking about, and not individually or selfishly or in an isolated fashion away from a collective consciousness. Now, hopefully that made sense to everyone. All right. Hopefully it made sense to you. Please, if it didn't, just write a comment down below, and please at 1:58, 59, you made these comments, and just what did you mean by that? Right? Can you expand on that? Because I'm pretty sure I was able to kind of encapsulate that. But if not, leave me comments. I appreciate the comments, and as I say, like, share, comment, and subscribe, and especially the comments. I want to know from people, what did you, were there areas you didn't get you didn't understand, and I want to, if I can clear it up, maybe I can explain it in a different way. So as always, I appreciate everyone saying, thanks for the video and whatever, but especially I want to open it up. If you have questions on what I've said technically and you need a further explanation, don't be embarrassed. And I would love to hear from you, right? I really, if you're watching this, please leave a comment of what you did like or you didn't like, or, an area that could be explained a little bit further, right? That's one of the reasons why I'm doing this, is to help people. And if I am helping you, I'd like to know. But if I can further explain something, I'd like to know. I respond well to specific questions. I put it that way. Right? And, I want you to know that. I read the comments, and sometimes I just put a little heart, and I do this for the live chat so I can be part of what you have going on, and we can talk. And a lot of times there's, in case you haven't been on one, there's a lot of people interaction. They know each other, and they kind of, it's a way to catch up with everyone in their daily lives, and like, oh, hey, how you doing, like that kind of thing. There's a quality to that which is wonderful, which is a resonance that helps build the collective experience in a positive way. And so that's one of the reasons why we do this. I do this with my guide. So, because remember, God is living through us, right? I don't know how to explain that. But God, the creator God, is standing back, letting us be God for him, right? It's him, her, it, right? And so my God, and not everyone has this in their life, a God that they're working with, and I know a lot of people don't, no one that I know of thinks of it that way, or most people don't think of it that way, that we are experiencing life here for God. We know, right? The ego, like that allows you to be in touch with God if you direct it that way, right? It's the egoic mind. And if you project it that way, it can, you can have the vision of God in your head. And mine is just the pure light creator at the fire, the amethyst flame, tending it there, living life through me. I have to bring back reports to God, right? And as I'm here, in my life and I experience things, I'm like, are you hearing this? Are you saying this, God? You look at this, God. You need to be part of this too. And I know God is, but it's like, there has to be the consciousness of my part of saying that, God be present here, right? Otherwise, that's the reality of it. Otherwise, the earth and the natural whatever, right? The creator God has to be invited here and asked to be part of this. And it's work. That's what makes it so difficult and so challenging here, is that the earth is creator God here, right? And you building a material world is allowed because it's all the material elements of the planet. However, that's not the full totality of the picture. And even in the mind, the mind is the brain is a sponge. So whatever you're conceiving in your mind, even still, is still material based. You have to leave, your spirit has to leave the body in order for you really truly to get a greater sense of God. And a lot of people that have died and come back believe there's a God. Trust me on that, Like I did. Pretty much all the people that I know who've died and come back believe that there is a God at that point. Like, yes, very much so. That was just dumb luck, blind luck. Yeah, well, believe whatever you want. You didn't die and come back. You don't have a say in the matter. Anyway, on that cheery note, that's kind of what we're called for to do. And what the ego, let your ego be like an eagle and fly and soar. Don't be petty with it. The egoic mind of humans, the human being, the split bifurcated mind, all of this jazz, can be convinced it is better to simply go along with the flow. I just need the job, I need the work, I'm not going to say anything, right? Don't make waves, don't cause trouble, don't argue with anyone. I'm specifically guilty of that. Yet, is being one more lemming better for anyone, including yourself? You know, a lemming, a herd of them will run off into the cliff, into the ocean. That's what lemmings do. The genetics code information from one life into the code structure of the being in real time to be held intact by the genes. I'm not sure what I meant by that. I can't explain it better. Hyperspace essentially is to break free from the material constraints, as well as constraints of the genetic code holding the species intact, right? So your genes, your genetics, the better part of you is not yours. It's not yours. It isn't you. It's your genetic, it's the code that reproduces itself into another being, but the greater part of you that makes you an individual is the coding part of the DNA, the 2% that's you. It's an individual, right? And so that's that, like that little tiny percent, the 2%, is the part that needs to or wants to break free from the planetary matrix, which includes the physical body itself, right? And this is, essentially, this replacement is the transhumanist agenda that has been talking about, replacing you with the bionic you, the superior you. Meaning all of, organic humanity. Right? The veil of Maya, or the veil of Gaia, the veil of the forgetting, right? The veil of the material matrix. These concepts are inherent to Earth School, this planet, Earth School. The veil is firstly that which makes this experiment so difficult, wonderful, and terrifying. Right? And so, I think it's important to point out, it's not just that the Maya have a time clock and whatever. Like, the word Maya appears all over in Buddhist mythology. Maya is one of the, it means, the world, the mother world, essentially. The Maya appears all over the world, and basically meaning, the illusion, the world magic in some cases, illusion, mother, the mother of the planet, the veil, and so the veil of forgetting is one of those, one of those important things that makes this so difficult, it makes this so wonderful, is that you're born with a clean slate, and from this you make decisions based on the little 2%, the little 2% of you that's an individual contains your free will that allows you to interact with others and resonate to such that, a degree that you and them, giving of their 2% as well, start collectively resonating and lifting up ourselves through our chatter, our internal dialogues made real to each other. So we both have our collective will, our collectiveness, give our, that 2% of our will over to this cause of our collectively building ourselves, raising ourselves, elevating ourselves up. That is the ascension that they're talking about, right? But it's not right? There's a lot of what they're talking about in the ascensionism that this isn't, that it's not, right? And it's important to understand the limitations of that, and especially if you're contributing it to the results of a report of some machine, you really got to know this, right? There isn't any other way to put it. And so, as we collectively give into this, our free will, the little bit of tiny bit of free will we have, we give into it, and we can be buoyant because we're with other people that are also helping us to be buoyant, and we collectively give that other part that belongs to the planetary grid, belongs to the planetary matrix, that will support us in that. Right? We've given consciously, she's waiting for that, right? It's there as much for anything else. We can collectively give into that, the buoyancy factor, the buoyancy effect of it, and it has a way of being contagious through the genetics, the collective experience of the genetics, the part of which that the modern science doesn't talk about, or they don't know, they don't understand, they don't want to know. They're starting to come to a greater conclusion of it, and study it differently now, blah blah blah. But this is part of the veil coming down that it's going to take. It's not an overnight thing. It's going to take a while, and it's going to take a while. It is working continuously, even still. It's an act of the will. It's an act of human being, one at a time, individually, to another person, one at a time, individually, to get through that we can connect, and then boom, we can start igniting a star. But until then, we have to work one person, one being, one spirit at a time, right? That's right at its center. That's how the atoms form. That's how we have to, we have to operate that way as well. So the veil is basically hidden from view. You wouldn't know it's there until it's pointed out, and then you're like, wow, holy crap, I really can see it, So this galaxy, let alone the entire remainder of the universe as we can observe it, is a vastly immense place. Earth may actually be a tiny speck of a place, yet I can assure you most of the known universe does not have this type of experience of the material veil of forgetting that one's born with a blind slate, or what's the other word? A blank slate, sorry. And has to make it up on the spot. Basically, we're learning here on the spot. The embedment of spirit animating the material matter or the flesh, your DNA, right? What am I talking about? Well, this is what I'm talking about. The embedment of the spirit or the animating material matter, me taking over this form, my will, my spirit, the will that I have of being here, the 2% of your physical DNA is your will. The rest of it lies in the animating force to be here. That is the light of source that's, animating. That is, it's inhabiting it, it's animating it, it's kind of igniting the DNA into, it's the code has been enabled, so it's the light that kind of holds it all together, the light of source, the pure light of source that kind of powers it all, holds it all together, the hope and a promise of the birthright, the spirit, the rest of the will that inhabits this, that's not property of the planet, my sense of me and my will, my ego, right? The part of me that also powers the ego that is not anchored in earthbound reality, right? That part of me that animates this, right? And it is embedded, the embedment of my spirit, that spirit, it animates the material matter and the body. It becomes a living flesh, right? As Christ talked about the living flesh, right? Which is constructed of the genetic code of DNA, a living adaptable language, which writes code based upon the materials available, the genetic and the epigenetic. That's something Terence McKenna talks about, the epigenetic factors that go into making you. And the part of it is, he talks about ingesting an entheogenic substance, such as mushrooms, such as, he talks about ayahuasca, DMT, like those things, of amending the diet to include those as a dietary supplement rather than, say, for example, methamphetamine as a dietary substitute, right? So we'll just put it that way. All right, so 2:16:16 rolling around. All right, so time for music, as we can see. We're 2 hours into this because of the music, like I don't have to play so much music, but I told you this is going to be a long one. So, I know it's going to be long, so why not even, why even fake it? Just play the music, This is going to be a really long video, whatever, I don't care. It's my DJ, my radio station, my radio booth, my DJ. I'm the DJ, or VJ, or whatever. Anyway, onward and upward. I said onward and upward. All right, let's go.
Garage, and the Gallery were some of the most notable nightclubs in the early 70s, the first of the real disco clubs to set a precedent of what the disco experience should be like. DJ, short for disc jockey, was perhaps the most
taking away your life. Get your feet on the floor. You'll find inside your love, get a hot ton of music. It's you and me dance forevermore.
This is a good mix. I am going to scoot that back a couple minutes to get back in the groove. We're back. I'm back. Welcome. This is a rather long video. We're at 2:23 right now. We're going onward and upward. You know, I wasn't expecting it would be this long, but I know I always, like, when you hire a contractor, you know, there's always some overrun, you know, so I know there's going to invariably be some time overrun when I go off script, you know, but the shorter ones, I was able to keep them under an hour, so I'm happy about that, right, you know. Even an hour, you know, like I like the hour, you know, time, you know, just all these, you know, I like sticking with the script and staying what's there and talking about what's on script. It just kind of, there's that Virgo part of me, I think, that, you know, like I really, or my OCD part or whatever, you know, because this is so technical, and I easily, part of it is that I can easily get kind of thrown off course and start going down some rabbit hole, and then I can't get back to what the hell the point was that I started talking about that subject, right? It drives me crazy. Right? You know, as a narrator, a story writer, you know, the writer in general, you know, I want to stick to a script and just, you know, like, you know, I'm a better writer than a talker. You know, I mean, I admit that, you know, I may have a, you know, face for TV or a face for video. I'm fine with that. Not like Joker, who has a face for radio. I love him. So, you know, so I could be present here. You know, it's me. It's on authenticity of me being here. You know? So I, you know, like, so I, you know, I don't want to get off script on stuff. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole. I don't like it, you know, unless I can kind of claw my way back, find my way back, and then I'm sort of okay with that. However, there are those of you out there who enjoy when I go down, you know, a rabbit hole and when I'm off script, and, you know, and even to the point of seeing me kind of squirmy a little bit about, you know, I don't like it, I don't want to do that, you know, taking, you know, being safe, like, oh, no, go down the rabbit hole. You know, I like it. You know, I have you on in the background anyway. You know, I'm doing whatever. You know, I'm syncing up my life in the background to you somehow in some way. So go off the, you know, off the beaten path and some crazy whack job, you know, side venture. I'm fine with that. You know, so I, you know, like I'm. Thank you for providing me with a safe space to go off the beaten path, and I'll just say this, you know, the longer I'm on, the more people get the notice. You know, I don't mind going off script so much. You know, it's like, hey, you're not under an obligation to watch this. I know those of you that you're here, you know, you got stuff to do. You know, I will talk to you on the flip side. Thank you for being here. And those of you, it's funny, no matter how long the thing is, there's always people that come in toward the end. It's like, oh, I just got the notice. You know, I you know, like, if you want to stick around for 3 hours or whatever it takes me to get through this,
Thank you. I appreciate that. There's 10 of you who will do that, right? And just, I do this for the 10 of you and myself. Myself first, and then the 10 of you, right? So, in that order. Oh, God, really. Actually, technically correct. First I do it because I'm here. I got to do that, right? All right, fine. All right. So I'll do it for myself. Boom. I don't need to do it for anyone else. I'm doing my mission, my life's mission. Hey, but there's 10 of you who appreciate this. Oh, 11, 12, 13, 14, 20. There's like 26, 23 of you invariably who show up, 30 sometimes. Ooh, right? I've gotten 32. One time I hit 32. It was that's max there, but that's fine. I couldn't talk to all 32 people, right? So 23, 26 people watching, that's cool. By the time I get 3 hours in, I've gotten 30 people, 35 or 33 or 32, or peak, how many were there. Everyone doesn't always talk, or so they're not that the maximum people there don't show up, but it's like it's a really crazy, hectic, awesome conversation when you got a lot of people, in there talking. They're all talking. Right? Sorry. All right, whatever. Anyway, all right. So, onward and upward. So we're talking about the potential for the junk DNA that is not discussed about for science, but at this point in the narrative of the Scientific America narrative that we're at, they're starting to see that this stuff is useful for stuff, and they're starting to find out what the purpose of they're studying what these genetic markers are, these repeating codes that they're coming across, the sets of aminos that are together repetitively. And so it's from this article in Scientific America that I'm pulling the following quote, where you read it, you could see it, at the beginning of it, what they're talking about with the chromosomes, right, and the counting out the blueprint, the genetic blueprint, right? So like a blueprint contains is sort of a code. It's like a type of code. It's represented on the paper, right? It's if you look at it, right, there is definitely a code on there. There is certainly they have codes represented by the electric code, the builder's code. So blueprint contains codes, right? That's important to understand, that a blueprint is not of itself a code. It contains codes. I think it's created by a set of codes together, right? I think it's like an umbrella, if you will. I think I don't think it necessarily is a code, but it certainly does. Its job is to contain a bunch of codes and give you the outlay of what it's supposed to look like, right? So as the article tells us, and I will scoot back here in the beginning of it, right, that the physical body is comprised of roughly 2% coding DNA, and the remainder is termed junk. And we saw that in what the hell was it? 1972, right? The late geneticist Sumu Ono, with a name like Ono. All right, so 72. So that's within the course of my life, right? So trying to think, in 1950, I think 50 something was 52 maybe, was the first time that they found out Western science, kind of Crick and Watson start coding the DNA. I think I forget what the year, and if you know, correct me in the comments. But I think it was in '52, so it's not that long ago. I should look that up. But I remember Crick and Watson. I can't remember the year exactly. Pretty sure it was the '50s. Anyway, I'll look that up. So anyway, all right. So this is what the article says, and I'm going to kind of read through some of the article. There's part of it I'm kind of omitting, just for the sake of time. Small part. A genetic blueprint consists of 3.42 billion nucleotides packaged in 23 pairs of linear chromosomes. Most mammalian genomes are of comparable size. The mouse script is 3.45 billion nucleotides. The rat's is 2.90 billion. The cow's is 3.65 billion. The code for a similar number of genes, about 35,000. Interestingly, all animals have a large excess of DNA that does not code for the proteins used to build bodies to catalyze chemical reactions within cells. In humans, for example, about only 2% of DNA actually codes for proteins. Right? For decades, scientists were puzzled by this phenomenon. With no obvious function, the non-coding portion of a genome was declared useless, or sometimes called selfish DNA, existing only for itself without contributing to an organism's fitness. In the late, In 1972, the late geneticist Susumu Ono coined the term junk DNA. Oh no. To describe all non-coding sections of a genome, most of which consists of repeated segments scattered randomly throughout the genome, right? I'm not off the mark in saying, oh no, when saying this guy's name, he termed 98% of you junk. God doesn't make junk. I'm sorry. Did you not know that? Seriously. All right, so I don't mean it to be, but this is kind of the joke of the video. Every video I kind of have missed some, haven't really thought about this, but every video I'm supposed to tell a joke, and this sort of qualifies for it in a subtle British humor kind of way. The guy who declares that we're mostly junk DNA. Oh no. I can't help it. Dude, seriously. Oh no. Typically, these sections of junk DNA come about through transposition or movement of sections of DNA to different positions in the genome. As a result, most of these regions contain multiple copies of transposons, which are sequences that literally copy or cut themselves out of one part of the genome and reinsert themselves somewhere else. I'm sure they explain more of this in the article itself, okay, that you can explain it. But you can see kind of here where I was talking about, like there are parts of your genes that, will cut and paste themselves to ability to heal, I would think, ultimately. And for the purpose of your physical body, itself healing, and that can be hijacked through use of drugs or drinking, to the effect that, you fill that with something else that's not a positive. Just put it there. Elements that use copying mechanisms to move around the genome increase the amount of genetic material. In the case of cut and paste elements, the process is slower and more complicated and involves DNA repair machinery. Nevertheless, if transposon activity happens in cells that give rise to either eggs or sperm, these genes have a good chance of integrating into a population and increasing the size of the host genome. So I think what it's talking about there is we're talking about how many billions of chromosomes that it talks about, which I read early on, that they're counting the amount as, your growth and your evolution, right? Basically. I can't believe you're here. Thank you. If there's someone here, thank you. I appreciate that, and I know you have somewhere to go, feel free to come back, if you can. We're doing the chat here. Like, this gives people a chance to chat with me. Like, that's like that is the benefit of doing one of these live chats, is that I'm here for a while. There was one time where it was a long video and I didn't show up. I passed out. So, but that's why I kind of try to do these at night. Oh, whatever. It is what it is. So thank you for being here. I appreciate that. Thank you for being here. This is a long one. I knew it was going to be a long one. There's a lot of stuff going on here. This is my birthday video. I don't care. We're playing music, whatever. I'm smoking. I got herb, meds, So, it's time to do, I get to do this. It's time. This is my work. This is work. This is my work. I do this. I'm supposed to be talking about this and discussing this. And there's a lot of reasons why. It's like, now is the time for doing this, And honest to God, there are those of you who are willing to sit here for 3 hours or 4 hours or whatever. Or it's like part of, there's a lot that I have to offer. And that's why I have to do this, right? So, all right. So I'll have to figure out more about the transposon. But what they're talking about is where they cut and paste and they move genes around to do different things, right? This is to increase the chances of integrating and for the long life of the person, right? So that's part of the evolutionary process, is you growing through this, I think, right? Although very catchy, the term junk DNA repelled mainstream researchers for studying non-coding genetic material for many years. After all, who would like to dig through genetic garbage, right? Thankfully, though, there are some cloakards, not sure what a cloakard is, who, at the risk of being ridiculed, explore unpopular territories. And it is because of them that in the early 1990s, the view of junk DNA, especially repetitive elements, began to change. In fact, more and more biologists now regard repetitive elements as genomic treasures. It appears that these are transposable elements that are not useless DNA. Instead, they they interact with the surrounding genomic environment and increase the ability of the organism to evolve by serving as hotspots for genetic recombination and by providing new and important signals for regulating gene expression. And that's the article as it's reading there, and I can't even pronounce his name. Wojciech Malkolowski. And what is junk DNA and what is it worth? Scientific American, right? So there's more to this, obviously, right? There's more to the article, at least, Yet this synopsis explains the situation nicely. Labeled junk DNA, it has not fueled the imagination of research scientists up to this point, right? Yet within the last 10 years, perhaps, the situation has been raveling. And this article is from 2007, right? So we are in 2022 now. So we're talking about, I lost my train of thought, but we're talking about, 2007, they have this argument, this discussion, and, it's over 10 years, right? 2007 to 2017 is 10 years, and now we're 5 years beyond that, 15 years into this. So perhaps the situation has been, they've been studying this more since then, So, all right. So this is, I think, the last part. It's a good place to break for some music. And this actually is 4, I think we're at. Is yeah, all right, good. All right. So this is a good place to break, because we're introducing a new, I'm introducing a new literature, a new reference here. This is a good place to break. We're at 2:45. Why not? I still have 14. So still another 40 minutes worth of the Aronmix left to go. So, and he gave me in the latest collection, it was 4 of the latest Aronmix, but this was the most latest of them. So the last batch he gave me, there was 4 that were, that I still got to work through. Videos that I can make around the Aronmixes. So, he comes around regularly. He's doing all right. I tell him you guys love him, love his music, So on that cheery note.
Don't just sit there drinking away your life. Get your feet on the floor. You'll find inside your love, get a hat ton of music. It's you and me dance forevermore.
This is a good mix. Mhm. I'm I'm gonna scoot that back 3 minutes. Yeah, so we can get back into that groove. Like, all right, so I make these long videos because it takes people that long to get these. I'm happy to make these long videos. If you're fine with sitting with me for 3 hours, like I'm I kind of enjoy that, especially the chat. Like I'm willing to spend time with you to answer specific questions. And like, if you're willing to, sit through all this time, I'll explain a lot of this kind of stuff that has, like it's been a quest for me, right? I've been on this quest for, God, I've found in 1990, I found this book, Where We're Going Now, what I'm talking about now, the Mayan factor, right? Now, I've already talked about the Mayan calendar and the Mayan sort of part of the Mayan civilization, the calendar and all that, uh, and all that. But this is a book that explains it a little bit more from a guy who's, is 30 years, 33 years at that point. And I came across this in 1997, I think, 96 or 97. I came across someone who had a copy of this and this information. So I had actually written out a bunch of it, and I don't know where that is now. Like some paperwork that has been lost. But I've been fascinated by the this material here since at least that long, since 1997, and when I found out how it related to all this other stuff. It's just, the I Ching is one of those kind of things, and then Terence McKenna was talking about that and that very thing. And like, all right, this is more than just, like a coincidence, right? So, the material here, when we talk about the DNA, like we're talking about the morphogenic quality of DNA and how it is it lends itself to the holographic nature of life here and the universe, right? It kind of fractally reproduces itself ad infinitum, right? So I talk about this material, the Mayans, because it's seems to be, weaving in and out of these various, the veil of Maya, right? Like Maya, Gaia, very closely related. Maya, Gaia, right? They're just easy enough to mispronounce, the language itself is living, it morphs, it changes, and things that are called things in one culture are similar in another, not quite, and whatever. It's just a difference of, the border of a country, and you have a different language, but the basic elements there, of like the word, water, ooh, it is in some places, agua, even, they're not exactly copies, but they have a very similar sound, as part of what language does, as it transmits, phrases, concepts, ideas over distance to related type of, related sort of, tongue, the way they use the language in that place, right? So one of the things that is more universal than language, the phonetics
of it is the symbology of of numbers as a code. But the way they have the numbers, like when I talk about what did the Mayans know, right? Like among other things, we talk about the system they have of I should just have left it. Hold on. Put it back to where I was. So it's a system of the numbering based on their the ones and the zeros. You can say the one and the 5 and the 0. All right. So 1 is a dot, and then you go up to 5, and then you have the next one is a 0, the return, which is a clan. This is actually supposed to be a clan. So I'll just read to you what it wrote. In any case, the Morley book made an indelible impression on me. And this is the author, Jose Aguilas, however name is pronounced. The photographs of the living Maya and the curious anthropological descriptions of the Maya in relation to other members of the Mongoloid race, the diagrams of ancient temple sites, and reproductions of stone sculpture of an extraordinary delicacy, harmony, and mystery all had me completely captivated. But nothing fascinated me more than the numerical and mathematical system of the Maya. Quickly, I learned the system. A dot equals 1, or a unit of a multiple of 20, a bar 5, or a multiple of 5 times 20, and a shell glyph 0, or completion. It was so fantastically simple and streamlined. And then there were the names of the different place values. Kin, the ones, Vinal, the 20s, Tun, the 400s, Ketun, the 8,000s, and Baktun, the 160,000s. Right, you see the dot and the bar. For long hours, I marveled at the mastery which this system represented, and the mystery of which its total purpose might have been. Clearly, Morley didn't know. As great as was his appreciation of the remnants of the Maya, he, like virtually all the archaeologists, as I was to later find out, judged the Maya by standards of material technology. Morley still viewed the Maya as being in the Stone Age. All right. So I'm not going to go into that. Where am I? All right. So I'm just pointing this out, that is a more, what do I say, more organic system. You know, you have 5 hands, and you have 5 fingers on a hand, like, so it's sort of almost like a, a bar. Like, it's a different system than the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like accountant math of the Western, type of thing. It's a symbolic, a geometric type of numbering, right? Hard to fathom. It is easy, but hard to fathom. Oh, like using that, but no, it's a different type of system, right? And the culture they built with just that numbering system. Right? It's important to mention it. Right. So Jose Aguiles discusses the morphogenic nature or the structure of the DNA. It is more than simply building blocks for life on Earth, right? It's not just the, like what that keeps us, together as people. Like, the genetic material is quite amazing stuff. It inherently holds memories based on the resonances, right? That are kind of around it and in the environment, essentially. That's one of the features of it, right? It holds memories through sound and etc. Right? So of itself, DNA transport genetic and epigenetic information across time and space. Could the system of the Maya be a code matrix that synchronized with a galactically evolved knowledge base adapted to the idiosyncronicities of the planet? All right, so see where it starts in quotes here? All right, this is the Mayan factor. This is the book itself. All right, so, but this is a little different place than where so the system of the Maya be a code matrix that's synchronized with a galactically evolved knowledge base adapted to the idiosyncrasies of the planet. This line of thinking led inevitably to the completion of code matrices, Earth Ascending, which I believe is a book that he read, or it's a theory or whatever. Begun initially as a text on geomancy. I think I'm missing, there's a G that's missing there. Or earth divination. The chief point of departure in this book had been coincidence, discovered, or at least expanded into scientific or philosophical inquiry by Martin Schoenberger of the identity of the I Ching and the 64 codons, the code words of the DNA of the genetic code. So we're talking about here the 64 codons, the code words of the DNA, the genetic code, all right, and and making and I have actually literature on this of like research where they're actually identifying matchups between the DNA and the I Ching, right? The Book of Changes. All right. This is Terence McKenna talks about this, and there are researchers on this. And here's this guy Schoenberger, who is linking the genetic codons to the I Ching, right? For myself, the synchronistically related discovery that each of the rows horizontally it has been a long video. Each of the rows and of the rows horizontally and vertically in Ben Franklin's magic square of 8 yields a sum 260 led me to a consideration of the relation between the Mayan sacred calendar matrix, the 260 unit Tzolk'in, and the I Ching. What followed was the unbidden flow of maps. That should be or matrices what happened was, and I transposed this by, I typed it out. So what happened was the unbidden flow of maps or matrices which constitute Earth Ascending, and this should be in italics, Earth Ascending, the key code figure being the binary triplet configuration whose base in the sacred Mayan calendar. All right. So I actually have research information on the genetic, actually studied from researchers on this here binary triplet configuration. And so there's a lot that is here. Like I knew this was going to be a lot, but there's still more that I have available to, for you to see that relates to this, that's in actual research form. Like, so for all of the whatever, the bullshit side I talk about here, there's research that goes behind it, and there's people who are saying this that I'm talking more about people who, the giants who've gone before me on whose shoulders I stand, like Terence McKenna. I bring him in because he's an early mentor of mine, and he was on some, well, he was definitely on something, but he was on to something, he was on something to be on something to get these theories, these crackpot theories, which I love, greatly. So, the part of this is the explanation and the expansion of these guys' theories of what is happening here. That's not just the junk DNA. It's not, that's not what is important. It's not, it's called that, but it's been, like all the rest of this Piscean age shit is termed one thing, it's labeled something, so you don't see it, you don't pay any attention to it, and then eventually they do, eventually the truth is going to come out. It's that simple. Wherever, regardless of whatever they mislabeled it as, we're now in the age and the time that it's going to come out. It is coming out, it will come out, and it's going to. Whatever was hidden, it's going to be revealed in the light. And that's part of us. We are the bearers of light, and we're supposed to be bringing light to these subjects. I don't like being termed. I don't like being being phrased a bearer of light, light bearer, light bringer, light worker, because it's like, all right, don't label me. However, light is kind of the job. I don't like the label, but that is the job. So, I'll do the job without the label. I'm fine doing the job without the label. All right, how about that? We'll negotiate it. But the job is, anyway, this bit of humor aside, the job is to bring light, be a bearer of light on the things that are complicated, like spiritually, etherically complicated. And that phrases that have been misused, mislabeled, misidentified, the technical information that's been kind of, the technical information that's been, misappropriated, and the explanation they give is for some other purpose, than to enlighten and explain what's really happening, like just the technical aspect of it, of actually technically happening, like, is void, right? And so it's not a true light bringer, light bearer, light brought situation. You're still in the dark, just for what it's worth. Let me just show you this. When he talks about Ben Franklin Square, I gotta find it for you. Hold please. Sorry. So I think you can kind of see this. I did that last time. All right. So it talks about Ben Franklin's magic square of 8 from Earth ascending. All right. So this is, I will have to, maybe I should I should find that, both books, and order them so I can get all of the thing and just kind of go through it and spend however many hours I need to go through that as well. And then I'll make it a hidden video and put the information on Patreon, for the paying subs, and get it out of the public. Like I'll do, few things I've talked about doing that. I have done that in a few cases. I've done the premiere And then within a week, I've made it public and put the information on Patreon, right? And, I'm still about doing that, just for what it's worth. All right, so that's where we're talking about the magic square. Like, and I'm gonna have to find that. I'll find that for you. Earth Ascending. I am hoping maybe it's in Google Books, but whatever. When I get my dad's estate thing cleared out, I'll have some money to work with, and I want to get a bunch of literature and a bunch of books and stuff like that. Reading material. Subscriptions to whatever. To unlock the special feature. My name is mentioned in a bunch of this literature, so I want to see what that's about. So the brain organ, the sense of self, and kind of that's where we're talking about the egoic mind of, the body of the DNA, is controlling it. Essentially the growth, is the 2% of you is the ego. Essentially, that's your ability, will, yours, completely yours alone. Right? Your ability to choose is 2% of the experience, the existence here. Right? So, that's held within the brain organ, the sense of self, his ability to process not only the experience of living in the body itself, yet equally, it would seem the ability to grasp a vast universe previously unseen and unexperienced. So we have this kind of split mind, dual nature to us where, it's like the brain itself can evaluate and understand this experience here of the earthbound existence of living in this body, right? Common experience of this existence. And yet we also can kind of blast out off into hyperspace, right? That we are able to conceive of at least in theory and to some extent, the mind of our consciousness being entombed, living entombment, encapsulation into a quantum matrix cube, a memory grid, the AI memory grid where we're held alive, held captive in our EMF signature. They've taken some type of picture or capture of it before our bodily death, and we're living on in a memory matrix cube, that's a quantum computer of some type, but it's a memory of who and what we were. Can we escape that or live in a different thing? I don't know. These are questions I can't answer. I can only say this for myself and only answer for myself what I know and what I want. But this is all, it's an illusion here. It's all kind of processed through the brain, which is a material kind of thing, So that's part of the illusion of this, is breaking free from the physical material constraints of the body and the material matrix and the mind matrix as well. That they got you, physically by the, they got you with gravity here, you can't fly. You're a captive audience in some work environment. And they try to control your ability to psychically leave this domain through the innate inherent ability of the DNA itself, right? Like that's the ability to visit, to astral project or remote view or psychically communicate with someone else, like reading their mind, like a loved one, like these kind of things, being on a wave, same frequency where you can, start reading some of the thought forms of their head, right? You just tune into what they're saying, for example, right? So these are all inherent abilities of humans that we have, that we're welcome to, that we need to adopt and develop moving forward. I think I don't know a better way to put it than that. But it's time. The time has come, and part of the promise of this age is getting what you put your attention toward, right? You manifesting what what your the images in your head, manifesting, instant manifestation, right? Just but depending on what you speak forth, how you speak it forth, whatever, these are important factors to consider. So all right, so we are at the end of this. The next two are not quite as long, not nearly as long. So I'm going to play an Aronmix on out of here. I'm at 3:21:21. So let's play this. Oh, this is really good, actually.
Okay, it's really close to 3:33. So we're going to end this just in mere seconds. So you're free to leave the plane in a moment. Bye, everyone. And thank you for being here. I very greatly much appreciate you being here. Thank you.